talk to me about the performance gains. So you got those in your shoe. And then what happens?
Yeah, so here's just, I'm going to throw this out there because this is a study that we did a couple years ago, an independent study where we brought in amateurs, some single handicaps up to, I think, maybe like an 18 handicap. And we had them warm up with their own clubs for as long as they wanted to. And then they wore spikeless golf shoes, so a shoe that has no replaceable cleats in it at all, and they hit, shots with different clubs in their bag. And then we also had them hit and compare it to when they had a cleated shoe, so replaceable cleated shoe. On an average, and these are amateurs, they were gaining up to 5-10 yards with their drivers. And their dispersion pattern came in as well. So if you think of an amateur who isn't hitting the center of the club face every time, like PJ professional, what do you think the difference would be in their gains that they would receive? Now, we haven't done any
Right.
testing with any actual tour players, which is something that I think is probably a next step that we'd like to do. But that's the kind of difference that you can see. Um, I mean, guys are looking for those type of advantages when they switch to a different shaft. And it's something that just by having better traction, you're more grounded. You can use the ground forces to create power even better, because you have more elements of traction. And the one thing I
Right.
like to explain to players is, if when you're talking about cleatless shoes and cleats, and shoes with cleats, is you only have one element of traction when you're using a spikeless golf shoe. If you have a replacement shoes in, you've got the outsole elements of the shoe as well as the cleat working in unison to give you that much more traction.
The performance situation does make some sense because of the fact that I guess you're more stuck into the ground, using the ground in a more efficient way. I'm assuming is kind of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, that's interesting. So I guess Jake, I guess I need spikes now. Is
Well,
that what I
Johnny,
need?
I'll throw something else at you too that I want Charles to speak on. This is one of the questions that I was going to ask immediately. Charles, in the back of his head, probably knew I was going to want to talk about this. Uh, Charles, what percentage of players don't have the same spike in every slot of their shoes?
Oh, good grief! That is um, there's definitely 25 to 30% that don't.
So wait, you guys are telling me that there's guys that change out they have different spikes in front and different spikes in the back and the side. There's a whole
Yes, sir.
thing.
Cor- Correct. Yes.
No.
We
Dude,
have
it's
guys
wild. It's
that,
fun, Johnny.
yeah, when we do these interactions on the range, or maybe I'm walking on the course with a guy, and he tells me, hey, I'm experiencing, my right foot slipping in transition. Um, what can I do? And depending on what kind of cleat he's wearing, a lot of times, unfortunately, he's wearing the shoe that came, or the cleat that came in the shoe. And this is probably something that I should explain too. Most of a lot of companies, that the cleat that comes on the bottom of their shoes is what they would call more green friendly cleat, that is not necessarily high performance, but it's something that's comfortable. Now that has changed a little bit. Some of the newer companies that have come out, they're going with more aggressive cleats, because they want more of what guys are actually wearing in their shoe to start with. And so that's something that's going on too. But you might have a guy that is slipping, and we might start with a more aggressive soft spike. If for some reason that doesn't fix the problem, they might graduate to the most aggressive thing that we can do, and that's a metal hybrid cleat. So it's got some soft spike elements, but also a metal stud in the middle, and that equivocally always fixes the problem.
And
Now, with that said,
that would be your what's the name of that? Because I'm on your site right now. That would be your what? What do they call that? It's not the pins or the small metal.
it's still on the Fast Twist 3.0 insert system, but it's called what are you talking about? The cleat, the metal cleat, or
I'm talking
the
about the metal
aggressive
cleat.
cleat?
The pro stingers.
Yeah, the pro stingers. Yeah, that's what we call them, pro stingers.
I want some
So
pro stingers.
The other thing there too, Johnny. So like the reason you saw me switch these out, which first off, that it's that easy. It took me 45 seconds during a podcast to switch these out. Is I see this setup all the time. So you get like you get nails or pro stingers or metals, whatever you want to call them, in this what I call the last bit or the last line of defense on for your slipping. Basically, is in these two parts. A lot of times I'll see it guys that they just have one spike. It's just one metal and a bunch of Tourflex Pros in this area, and the way it was described to me is that the development of the Tourflex Pro is essentially a polymer pro stinger surrounded by secondary elements of rotational or dynamic traction, so that you're not only placed in the ground, but you're also kind of screwing yourself into the ground, because a lot of golfers think that on your back foot, and I made a video about this a while ago, but your back foot doesn't actually pivot like this. It leans into itself and rises. So there's one spike that if it doesn't exist on the bottom of your shoes, and most companies have taken care of that placement, that spike is kind of your last line of defense because of the way that your back foot actually moves during the golf swing. And that's why a lot of times you'll still see that single one provide all the downforce traction of a metal pro stinger, whereas the Tourflex Pro has started to take over because of the idea of having secondary traction elements and also rotational traction elements that give you a second line of defense while the pro stinger still fights through debris for you, because that's the primary purpose of those, is to go through leaves and grass that didn't get picked up and other stuff that's in the way of your foot to the actual playing surface. And at least that's the way it was described to me. Obviously, Charles, please chime in, but I think that's the cool part about like the combo setness of the spikes is, like, I did mine based out of feel, so I wish I had the shoes up here, but I do Silver Tornadoes and Tourflex Pros, which on the list of traction are the highest two, but they're very different profile spikes. So I like having the Tourflex Pros in the front and the Silver Tornadoes in the back, because it allows me to feel a little bit of shift between my foot, so I really drive into that front side and I'm locked in regardless of what my like foot lie is. I guess that's not a word, but we're gonna call it one. But to me, it's a comfort thing, and it's a nice little feel thing within my swing that kind of triggers my downswing. But yeah, I was the same reaction you're having right now, Johnny, is the same reaction I had to the first time I talked to the SoftSpikes guys, and then when I talked to Charles on tour the first time, I was beside myself with some of the things that he was explaining to me happen out there with just these little things that go in the bottom of your feet.
I don't like. I'm trying to simplify my life, and
Mhm.
and Jake, that's some of the dorkiest shit I've ever heard in my life, and I was literally attached to every single word that you said. So kudos for that explanation, because it was very interesting. But like, I don't want any new things in my life. I don't want to start chasing spikes around. But now it's like, now I have to have the spikes, because Charlie said I can get 10 yards longer.
Yeah,
Jake's calling them the greatest thing ever. So now now I got
you hit it
like
out of the middle of the face more often.
now I have FOMO. So now I feel like I've been wasting good play for the last 8 years because I've been wearing tennis shoes.